If you have come from a broken home and you've ever felt like it was your destiny to fail at marriage, this episode is for you. Hi, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Christian Marriage Podcast, the only podcast on the entire internet about Christian marriage that I host. I'm Nick. I'm a Christian marriage coach, and on this podcast, I talk with couples who have been recommended to me as having Christian marriages full of love and wisdom. We talk about how they made it through hard things in their marriage, and we tell these stories so that you can have great examples of how real couples just like you have been able to build great marriages. We tell those stories so that you can be encouraged and challenged to build a life-giving marriage for you and for your spouse. So let me introduce you to Don and Katrina. They are originally from Michigan and now live in Virginia. They have been married for 22 years, and for their 20th anniversary, Don took Katrina to a tropical island for an entire year. It was a year of missions. And something interesting about them individually is that Katrina, having grown up on the Great Lakes, prefers fresh water to salt water. And Don used to be a coffee hater, but now picked up the hobby of roasting his own coffee through COVID. They were a ton of fun as a couple. I think you're really going to enjoy them. And they have so much wisdom to add to people who are coming from in some sense, a bad foundation for their marriage. The people that come from broken homes and broken marriages. Let's talk about some principles that stood out to me in the course of my conversation with Don and Katrina. Now, some studies indicate that when both spouses come from divorced homes, like Don and Katrina, that couple is something like 189% more likely to divorce themselves. Why is that? What Don and Katrina found made their early years of marriage harder was that what they saw as normal was actually broken. And I see that in couples that I work with a lot. We all tend to default to what feels normal. But when normal is broken, that can really set people up for failure. For Don and Katrina, they were able to navigate this through getting to know the real nature of good, through getting to know God, getting to know others who had good marriages, and coming into marriage with a humility that made them quick to seek other people's perspective. One important Bible story that both of them said was really important to them, especially early in marriage, was the story of Joseph from Genesis 40 through 50. In the story of Joseph, God takes some very evil things that happened to Joseph and turns them into something very good. Now, this gave Don and Katrina hope that if God could grow good fruit from a bad tree, then he could also restore the brokenness that they came from and help them grow a good marriage. Because Don and Katrina knew that they were coming from broken homes and they knew God could heal what is broken, this culminated in practically giving them a mindset going into marriage that was really helpful. Now, whereas most people come into marriage feeling like they have really arrived. Don and Katrina came into marriage knowing that they were going to have to fight for each other. It led them to be zealous about learning from others and growing in faith and growing their marriage. That commitment to overcome those obstacles ultimately led them to a great marriage. That is one of the reasons I hope that this podcast will help you build a life-giving marriage. Build is a very active word there. It takes commitment, purposefulness, and perseverance. And Don and Katrina, in spite of all of the odds, have done it. Or probably what they would say is that they are currently doing it. So I hope that if you come from a divorced family and you don't have like great examples of marriage, I hope that you know that yes, there are obstacles that you have to overcome, but also know that God restores and redeems what is broken. Through his love and power, there is nothing stopping you from having a great marriage. One of the obstacles that you might need to learn in the course of coming out of a broken home is how to handle conflict. What is normal for in the family that you grew up in might not be a good way to do conflict. And I want to give you a gift that can help you identify some of the mistakes that might come normally to you in the course of conflict. It's called The 7 Deadly Sins of Marriage Communication. It's a guide that I put together to help you identify the mistakes and the solutions that might make the difference between taking an interaction and blowing it up into a really unhelpful fight, or being able to navigate interactions with love and grace and peace. So use the link in the description to get your copy of The 7 Deadly Sins of Marriage Communication so that you can have a little bit more of a head start in identifying what might not be natural to you and where to go with it. If you are finding this episode helpful, would you please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review on the platform that you are listening to this? That would really help me help others build a life-giving marriage. So let's dive in with Don and Katrina. And Katrina, so good to have you on the Christian Marriage Podcast. I'm really excited to talk about, I think, what a very relevant topic for so many people today. So I just really appreciate you being here and joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, our pleasure. I'm thankful for what you do and how it's blessing marriages, and glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So many people come into marriage with either out of divorce or out of a broken family, or maybe out of multiple broken families. And that is some of your guys' story. So what you chose to talk about is kind of the story of how you guys entered marriage from essentially some level of a broken home, and how you had to figure out, okay, how do we do this in a way that doesn't break us and break our relationship and break our family? And you had to do it kind of on the fly without a bunch of examples. So we're going to talk about what was helpful in that. And I think I may have said this to you, but one of the big reasons that I sort of came up with this idea for, this type of podcast is that one thing that I heard from couples over and over again is, I just don't know how to do this marriage thing, that I I didn't have good examples, right? So you guys didn't have good examples either. And so, but you have figured out how to fight for each other and everything. So I'm really excited to dive in and see what has been helpful for you there. So why don't you fill us in and kind of set the stage for us here? Where are you coming from? What was happened in your past that kind of didn't leave you with real great examples to be married?
So we both come from divorced and remarried situations. So it was actually the thing that brought us together is just the commonality, and even like how God is funny, and like both of us, the divorce happened in our homes when we were about 5. And the remarriage of our moms happened around the age of 8.
Really? Wow.
And from there, we were in homes from that point on that would claim to be Christian. But yeah, God used that time, especially for me. I'll speak for myself that, I came to Christ after my mom's remarriage. And so I always say, like, the testimony of Joseph is always a sweet reminder that the enemy meant this for evil, but God meant it for good. And so divorce in my life and being a product of that brought me to a place where it wasn't good, but God meant it for good for me. And it was through that I came to know Christ.
Yeah, wow.
And even still watching my mom and my stepdad wrestle through the hardship of, this new relationship, and was just very unhealthy and hard. And being the youngest of 5 siblings and watching most of them kind of step out of the home and away from God. And so being the youngest and watching all of that, I just didn't have really any good example with my mom, my dad, my older siblings, kind of all walking. My mom and my stepdad just, hardness in the marriage, but then, siblings kind of walking and leaving the church in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah. And that is like overwhelming on us on so many levels, I'm sure. I mean, I appreciate that you're even able to find good in it. But man, it's heartbreaking whenever that kind of stuff happens. So what about you, Don?
Yeah, obviously I didn't understand all this like back then, but as I reflect back on it, there's just the reality that when God created, like everything that he made was good. And part of that beautiful creation was the gift of marriage.
Mm.
And the way we define sin with our kids is that which ruins things.
Yeah.
Everything God made was good, and sin just corrupted it. It just ruined it. And as we kind of go through the Bible, we see like that becoming a generational thing that gets passed down, and just the ruin just affects generation after generation. And so that, I think, is part of like, as we look back and we see just how sin did have its way of ruining marriages for our parents, and that the impact that had on our siblings, and left us in a place of just not sure like how to do this thing
Right.
that used to be good, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't know where to go. I don't know how to figure this out.
Yeah, for sure. So you can even look back, and as you've grown up, you can see ways that even like specific sin like caused problems along the way, and yeah, that sin is what ruins things. You can see how sin ruined relationships and lives, and in a sense affected both of you, like ruined a certain part of your childhood as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. I like that definition of sin. The sin is what ruins things. Yeah, like permanent markers on walls. Yeah.
Yeah, so we could go down stories of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so how did it affect you kind of coming into marriage? So then, you guys meet, and that's one of the thing about like doing premarital stuff is you basically have no idea what the problems you're going to face are, because you guys survived. It's not like you survived the divorce, and you were following the Lord, and you met each other, and you had no idea how maybe it was even affecting you. Probably, I'm guessing. Okay, you enter into marriage, What was hard? How did not having those examples and seeing that brokenness and living through the brokenness, how did it affect you whenever you started out being married?
Yeah, I think like you touched on it a little bit, this idea that like we don't even understand it's normal. It's the life we lived.
Yeah.
And so to comprehend all of the impacts of it, I don't know, but even to this day, we still look at the ways that that has impacted our lives. And that's what's destructive about sin. Some of the ways that it impacted us, particularly in this question of like how to prepare for marriage, was the desire to be different. Like the recognition of this is not a good way. What we have seen, what we have observed is not, it's not healthy, it's not helpful, and it's not God's good design.
Yeah.
So that feeling, but also at the same time, not sure what to do about it. Like, how do I learn? Like, even simple things like I was never taught how to change oil in my car. Like, I need to
right.
find somebody like help me understand how to do this.
Yes.
Because we grew up before YouTube. But there's also one of the things I just thought of when you asked the question is I remember one of the first girls I wanted to ask out, when her mom caught word of it, she told her, no, you can't go out with him because his dad was divorced and he's going to be like his dad. And so there was not only that reality of like, I don't want it to be different, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
But there's also some of that question in my heart of like, am I just destined to be a failure at this? And so that was just a big weight that kind of brought with it.
Yeah. So one question that I had was, so you knew that you wanted to be different. You could see something you could see a certain brokenness and you knew that you wanted something different. How did you even know? Because like you said, it was just normal. Like the brokenness was your normal. So how did you even know that something was broken?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm sure there's probably a lot of answers to it. The first thing that comes to my mind as you ask the question is one of God's gifts was my grandparents and my grandma. My mom worked a lot of jobs, and so we'd often get dropped off with her. And God used her a lot to kind of shape my heart and to help me in many ways, just kind of have a worldview that was slowly kind of pointed back towards his design. So she was a big part in helping me. And we would pray together about a lot of things too. So she was a big part of helping me see that.
Yeah. She was actually an example of, something that an example of something other than the brokenness, I guess.
Yeah. And long story short, she also helped take us to church where I met a man that invested in my life spiritually. And so that's really where God began to get me in his word to see his way. And as I saw his way, like it started unpacking a lot of things.
Okay. So then the next step there was once you really start getting to know who God is, then you start seeing a different way. Then you can then start to like compare, my normal actually looks broken from this vantage point, from getting to know God.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the effect more for me, I was actually seeing it more like as a positive thing of as we were going through it and as we were kind of even I feel like processing together like the hurts and the effects that maybe we hadn't noticed before. And honestly, we're not like over the hill with that. I mean, there's still things that come up and it's like, whoa, yeah, that feels like I was 8 again. Like,
Yeah.
so you just kind of keep bringing up the things that maybe still need to be healed. But I also like the positive was I saw something different in Don than I saw in my home. And so a lot of times that gave me such hope because he was a man who was walking after the Lord. And so when we got married, you saw this humility of I don't know what I'm doing, but a reliance on Jesus. And to see that in my husband gave me a lot of hope, gave me a lot of security. Yeah, it just really helped me. I think for a lot of it was there's joy in my marriage and there's fun in my marriage, and which I didn't see in my home.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
but there was that like a positive twist of seeing, oh, like this is what it's supposed to look like. And this is what a husband's supposed to be like. And it's, credit to the Holy Spirit who was totally leading and guiding Don in the beginning of our marriage. And um, yeah, there was specific times that I would stop and I would pray for specific things. And weeks later, he would come to me, and it was like evidence of like the Holy Spirit working on him, because it was things that I didn't necessarily say aloud, but I would say to the Lord. And how God met me in those times was just a sweet reminder of like, yeah, this is good. This is the good things of marriage and what it's supposed to be like. Not saying it's been perfect ever since, but it started in such a way that I have trust in God first and foremost, because he was evidently working, but then also trust in my husband as he trusted in God. That as he led me, and as he leads our family, like there's a trust, and there's a I know he's relying on the Lord, and I know he's praying, and he's developing his own relationship with the Lord. And so that gives me hope,
Mm.
which I didn't have as a kid watching from
Yeah,
my parents' relationship.
for sure. So entering marriage, you actually saw the difference there. You actually saw a man who was humble, and which I think is funny. Like, Don, you're saying one of the things that was really hard for you was this: I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to do this. How do I YouTube marriage? Like, and you couldn't even do it. The admission that you didn't know what you were doing and you needed to figure it out and rely on others and rely on the Spirit was actually one of the things that brought you a level of peace, Katrina, because the like showing that humility was actually very refreshing, I think is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Because I'm sure I wanted to ask Don what that felt like for you. I'm sure it didn't, that how do I do this? Like, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to be a husband? And the answer was, I don't know what I'm doing, kind of thing. So what was that like for you? Say more about just how that felt, and what was like the biggest frustration of that time for you?
I think it's more of a history rewind than anything. I'm just trying to remember how I was feeling and processing. But there was a comfort in some way, like a weird comfort. Like she kind of mentioned, like we're both coming from this situation. And so as we started really pursuing marriage and then starting marriage, there was a lot of neither one of us understand this. And so we're trying to do this together. And there was a unity
Mm-hmm.
in that was really peaceful. But there was also just kind of even more that drive of, man, we want to change legacy. We want to like turn the ship around. And so it just kind of like lit that flame even more of, okay, she's looking to me and I don't know what I'm doing. So like, we need help. And so not only God's help, but we need practical help too.
Right. Yeah. And so you had the feeling I'm getting is that you had a certain, like, you both knew that you were in the middle of nowhere, and that you both kind of knew that if you were going to do this, you needed to work together.
Yeah.
And it, what, kind of, this isn't going to be pretty, but like, we're going to fight for each other. And you both wanted that, and expected to have to put in the work, basically.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's actually pretty helpful, because I would say most people enter marriage as like, we've made it, like, we have finally arrived for some, this is what we expect for some reason. But you guys had a very different mentality, which was, here we go. Like, now it starts for us. Seems really practically helpful. Let me go back to you, Don. So you knew that you needed help. What kind of helps did you look for, and what kind of helps did you find?
There's kind of the both sides that I referred to. There's the part where I just needed God's help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and understanding like at his nature, he is a restorer and a redeemer. I'm a firm believer that we are a product, like not just we, every person, we are a product of our God picture. Like how
Mhm.
we see him, how we understand him, what he reveals about himself, when we understand that, it shapes us. And so that was the first area where I just felt like I needed help. I needed to understand who God is and how he wants to redeem and restore. And coming to a place where he helped me understand too that nothing's wasted. He uses everything with purpose and intentionality. Johnny Erickson Tata, she's an author, speaker, but she made a quote that stuck with me, that sometimes God uses what he hates to accomplish what he loves. And part of that, I just needed this season where God helped me grasp that. The history wasn't perfect. It wasn't good in a lot of ways, but he was using that. And so that was the first thing. I just feel like I had people in my life who came to help me see God and understand that journey. But then also, like, I referred to this man who discipled me, but I think it was coming to a place where I grasped that discipleship isn't just about being God's word together. It's learning to live life God's way. So the more I began to like see people do that, the more I was like, man, I need to learn about
Mhm.
life from them. And some
Yeah.
of them were people who we just looked and we're like, their marriage is good. We see this, we admire this. And so I want to learn from them. And so whether they were people who were actually in our life or speakers or books, just to like
Yes.
learning to identify things that are good, that are closer to that design that God had, and then learning from it.
Yes.
Others were finances. I didn't know what I was doing with money when we got married, and so looking for people who, man, they seem to be doing it well, and I want to learn
Mhm.
from them.
Yeah.
As we started approaching kids, like, man, I love watching their kids, and I want to learn from that. And so a lot of it just became this aspect of just even like she mentioned humility. I think not knowing just creates a natural humility. Like I want to look and I want to find people who are doing it in an admirable way.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
want to admit I don't know, but I want to learn from you.
Yeah. 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 You would think that not knowing, but that's not always the case.
Maybe that's an overstatement.
In the best cases, not knowing creates humility in you.
That's fair.
So that's
That's
good.
fair.
Okay. Coming to know God. So I think you mentioned two things that you said coming to know God deeper and what it and sort of practically and putting people around you that kind of in essence gave you the examples that you needed of what does it mean to be a Christian husband? What does it mean to follow not even just being a Christian husband, like what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to follow God? And then that worked itself out in how you tried to be married, but then also like on so that was kind of the vertical level, but then also finding those examples horizontally was a big part of learning about God, I think is what you're saying. So
Yeah. Because there's the part that's provided the hope, and then there's the practical help.
yeah,
I think
right.
both of those were needed in my life.
You said the most hopeful thing for you there was this idea of God as a restorer. Was that kind of that was a theme that really empowered you in that really first season?
It was because I don't want to go too long into this, but there was a season through all of this where I just really started questioning God, whether he was good. I think a big corner for me was my grandmother, who I mentioned. She would tell me Bible stories all the time, but there was one that clicked, and that was the story of Joseph. And the years of hardship he went through in slavery and in Potiphar's house and falsely accused and all these things. And at the end, as he stood before his family and took his clothes, like his disguise off, so to speak, the words that came from his heart and his mouth were, "You meant this for evil, but God meant it for good." And so for him to see, like, from a totally different perspective and paradigm shift of God's plan in the midst of something hard, that became part of that life turning point for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you were able to take that and like that could be my story, basically, is what you're saying. Sure. Katrina, let me go all the way back. So you hit the ground running in marriage. What was the hardest part for you of like knowing that you came from this, divorced family and trying to figure this out together? What was the hardest part for you?
I want to say the hardest part was, I think, like I had mentioned before, of like, and I still feel like the hardship continues to come of the things in the past, the lies in the past that I've believed about myself, about him, about the Lord. they continue to resurface, and it's in different seasons and different parts of life of these things that were normalized or these lies that had taken root. Yeah, it feels like I continue to have to like pull that root up, shake the dirt off, and then try to toss it, but feels like it
Yeah.
keeps getting planted back down.
Freaking dandelions, right?
Yeah. Yes. So I feel like that was kind of the hardest part is, uh, feeling like I'm reliving part of my childhood in my marriage and not overcoming in certain ways and in certain seasons of life. And yeah, and continue to see that and almost get frustrated at myself of like, why am I still dealing with this? Why
Yeah.
why does this continue to be a problem? I know
Mhm.
I know better.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
know what God says about me and I know what he says about himself and I can trust that. But yeah, it's just hard I think when the rubber hits the road, it's those things kind of just naturally pop out and it's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, for sure. You don't have to, but is there like an example of a lie that you've really had to fight to keep digging out of your life that you'd be willing to share?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the things that keeps surfacing is almost like the way that I handle conflict with
Mhm.
us. Yeah, my home growing up, my stepdad was pretty unpredictable when I came home from
Mhm.
school. I didn't know, whether it was going to be happy go lucky or whether it was a hard day and it's going to get taken out on me or if I do something wrong. A lot of times my mom would be the object of anger and things like that. And so I learned very early on to try to be at peace, be the peacemaker,
Yes.
constantly put myself down
Yes.
and
Yep.
try to maintain the peace. And so
For
when
sure.
I feel like that is like I'm starting to be attacked, that's my natural
Yeah.
response
Yep.
mechanism is I hide, I put down, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Let's move on.
Yes.
There's something funny. Ha ha. Like, just and so I'm constantly
Yes.
in that process and still in that process of like my natural tendency is to want to be at peace at all costs.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
is not necessarily healthy in a marriage because conflict, I know, is helpful in a marriage because it helps me hear from him. It helps me speak and share. But that's just always been really hard for me.
For sure.
And that's always been the case. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. So
It's
still
hard.
with that.
Yeah, it's hard for you. It's hard for so many others as well. I mean, I'm sure that you know that that's something that so many people have to, they've had to learn how to keep themselves safe in the home that they grew up in, and that does not really translate well into a relationship. So was there anything that was specifically helpful in helping you sort of even have the courage to think differently about this idea of conflict? Was there anything that was true about God that was helpful, or anything that you did? Just, yeah, what was helpful?
Yeah. I mean, I think having a correct understanding of who God is and that even the peace that comes with knowing I can be myself before God. Like
Mm-hmm.
we went through a time where we had miscarried a baby and I was angry. I was upset. And I
Yeah.
felt like the normal Katrina would have been like, it's okay, God, like
Mm,
it's fine. But I feel like during that season, I was upfront about it with the Lord. Like I was able to confess this. Like I know you're good. I just don't feel like you're good right now.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think having that kind of security in the Lord in my relationship with the Lord, like I feel like David was very open like that with the Lord
Yes.
and learning how I can be like that, but yet but also understand that I'm fully accepted and fully loved and fully forgiven and that he already knows
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
I'm feeling that way. Gave me a lot of peace. And I think when it comes to our marriage, Donna's pretty good about reminding me of like you're kind of like you're doing it again. Like I see it. Like he's really good about not letting me get away with it almost like
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I think that's really helpful to help me grow of like you're right. I might need some more time, but yeah, I see it and I
Yeah.
understand it, but I'm not ready to quite. I need time to process internally before I can process it out loud.
Yes. Yes. That's good. That's good. And you trust him to like take his feedback in that moment. But yeah, but you trust him enough to know, and probably you've learned to trust him over the years, like that. You know what? I can receive that. Yeah. And practically, I want to note there's a lot of wisdom in how you guys apparently handle that. I mean, just in the little example that you said, okay, I receive that. I'm going to need some time to process. Let's talk about it later. Something like that. And in the meantime, you both are seeking the Lord. No, I love that you were able to be angry and accepted with God. And that was not, you could be yourself in a way that you were not able to actually express yourself in your home, but you were able to actually live that out. And kind of like what you were saying, you were able to use that as an example of, this is good, to be angry and safe. That's what good is. And then you were able to say, okay, back whenever I felt that I was not like angry but not accepted back in my home, that's what should not be normal.
Right.
And you're able to use that to say, I want something different. Yeah.
Yes.
Even though it's a process, right?
22 plus years of practice.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's so powerful. It's really good. Is there any like story that you guys have of how all this came together? I'm kind of throwing this at you, but does anything come to mind about how, just an anecdote about how all of this maybe came to a head and something that you worked through?
Specifically, the conflict or of.
Yeah, or just, yeah, either like this specific like conflict stuff that we're talking about, or just coming from brokenness and trying to figure it out together, having to overcome it.
Mine just kind of keeps going to two things. I'm trying to tie them together, but the first thing that comes to my mind is we've really benefited Paul David Tripp.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of his writing has been really helpful for us, but we went to a marriage conference of his, and the whole title of it was What We Were Expecting.
Mm-hmm.
When two sinners say I do, and we come together, like,
Yeah.
there is not perfection, like, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't expect perfection. There's going to be conflict. But to realize where that conflict is coming from, like that's the hard part. Is like you get into conflict, it just feels like it's me against you.
Right.
But that was one of those moments where that struggle kind of came, like a light went on a little bit of. I think we've known it, but that we're not fighting against flesh and blood. Like there's sin that has entered and it is ruining things. And so when we can turn that conflict from each other and begin to address the issue in humility and togetherness, like, but that's so hard. Like in those moments when
Yes.
the stress levels rise and you're breathing fast, your heart's going and you're,
Yeah.
But we have hit some of those moments where that marriage conference in particular was helpful to kind of
Identify that you're not my enemy.
yeah, and to put our efforts more collectively together.
Yeah. So powerful, right? That because in the moment, it feels like you're the bad guy, right?
Yes.
So
if only you would stop doing, or I would stop doing. Like there's that if only.
Exactly. Yes. The if only. Gosh, if only the if only would go away.
That's a whole other talk.
But okay, but you're saying we learned by faith to say, you know what? You are not my enemy. And so I need to take these thoughts captive that would tell me that my spouse is my enemy, and serve, I don't know, serve or be humble or whatever. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Okay, so what has happened? What did you all figure out? Like, what is the fallout of learning the things that you've needed to learn, and what blessings are there on the other side of trying to figure this out together?
I think God has definitely used it. He's used our story. He has used, just our own, what is it, walking in the dark, like our blindness as we're trying to figure things out. He's used that for his glory. And I think even practically, he's given us a heart for marriages. And that's come out in a multitude of different ways, but we've helped with, active duty couples,
Mm-hmm.
who are on the front lines, but also the front lines of their marriages are also struggling. We've really loved the ROTC couples. That's specifically what we work with in particular. And so getting them ready for marriage, and helping them see some of maybe those lies or those pitfalls that are coming. And so I think, God has definitely certainly used it in those capacities. Yeah, it continues, I think, to stretch us, because I feel like when we were first married, we had, like, we called it built-in community, because Don was going to seminary, and we went, we were at a local church, and there was a lot of young married, and so there was just a lot of really easy community. But then when we moved here about 10 years ago, I feel like there's been a little bit more of like, okay, reinitiating, getting ourselves out there, and inviting, trying to create community that's more natural and organic, but it's harder in this season of life. But
For sure.
always trying to have a vision for, they're 5, 10, maybe 15, 20 years ahead of us. And we love that about that couple. And so let's get together with that couple. And so we can pick their brain. And it has been also been a good result. I feel like we've continued just to be humble learners of each other and humble learners of other people who look like they're doing better.
Yeah. Let me ask you this practically: how do you find those couples, and how do you learn from them? What do you ask them? What does the process of learning from them look like?
So I think Don had alluded to this earlier, but like in discipleship, it's not just, let's be in God's word together, which is very vital and important in discipleship relationship, but it's also, I think a lot of times people in the church get a little afraid when they hear, like, you want me to disciple you? Like, ooh, that seems like out of my comfort zone. And so I think maybe even changing the terminology, of there's a couple in our church that, again, they have a sweet marriage that we look up to. They're probably about 10 years older than us, and they lead a small group. And so it's like, well, I know what small group I want to join, just because I want to interact with them. I want to be close to them. I want to see how they live their life. And then as we're doing life together, I can ask those questions of, or, hey, I'm struggling in this area. Can I just meet with you and have coffee with you so I can ask a couple of questions? And it's a lot less, I think, stressful on the other person, and a lot less, disarming when you come at it of like, I see this in you, and I'd really love to hear from you. Can we get together? And so, I think that's kind of how we've always kind of done it, of incognito.
But the difference that you're talking about is, almost the difference between something like I'm picturing like there's a difference between like a notary or just like a handshake kind of deal. Like, and you're saying rather than coming to the person to like, can you stamp me with holiness? You're just like, hey, can we be friends? Like, you're cool. Can we do life together? And in the back of your mind, you're like, I think this is going to make me more holy. Like,
yeah. They don't know it yet, but they're gonna
yeah. Okay. But seeking life with people that you respect and that are doing things that you want to you see that you want to be in a few years, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it can be all over the place. I mean, some of it, like right now, our oldest is 17, and kind of starting to dabble on her first relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's helpful for us to look at those families whose kids are getting married, and who can reflect back on that process of like their kids entering the dating phase. And so still, like, even though we've learned a lot through this process of understanding, we still need help and like helping our kids learn to date and do this in a healthy way. So that can be as simple as, hey, I just love being at the wedding, and it was great to hear their story. Can we grab coffee? I'd love to talk about that journey for you from your perspective. And So it doesn't have to be anything formal. It can be super casual. And if it involves coffee, all the better.
Yeah, right. It's good. All right. Well, this is great, guys. So last question. If you could kind of boil down your story into like one piece of advice for a couple who is coming from a broken background and is trying to do this crazy thing called marriage, right? What one piece of advice would you have for that person, for that couple?
I think kind of what I alluded to earlier is just be a humble learner. I don't necessarily always do this the best, but I think that that's the posture that I desire to have most in my marriage and in my parenting, is a learner of my husband, my spouse, my kids, um, and also learning about it. Like we're never experts, I don't think, at this marriage thing. And so understanding that, and always understanding that different seasons bring different complexities. And so always be ready to learn the next thing, the next season, with humility.
Yeah, that's great. Be a humble learner. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's kind of, I was tracking similarly at the beginning, just like knowing that we don't know best. And if we approach, and it's hard, especially for us guys. I don't know. I just feel like I'm supposed to know the answer. I still feel that pressure of I'm supposed to know the answer.
Sure.
But piece for me has just been knowing that I don't know best, and just having a mindset of I need to be a learner for a lifetime. And I think for both of us, but I'll say it from my perspective, of just grasping and even communicating to Katrina, like, I will fail you and you will fail me. I think, man, if we have that perspective in marriage of understanding this person is going to let me down and I will let them down, it cultivates a hope, kind of that search of like, where can I go that's not going to let me down, or where, like,
yeah.
and so ultimately, like, not making her the thing I build my life on and vice versa, that we are trying to learn together. And I want to bless her. I don't want to fail her. I don't want to let her down. I want her to seek the same. But ultimately, kind of coming to that reality of God is the only one who will not let us down. And let's both build our foundation there. And as we build on that together, we can make this house a home, kind of like mentality.
Yeah.
And one of the just kind of final quote that goes along with that is Paul David Tripp again, but he just says the gospel promises fresh starts and new beginnings. And that's what I feel like he gave to us. The marriages that launched us were broken in a lot of ways, and they were a mess in a lot of ways, and we didn't know what we were doing. But as we came to God in the midst of this, like, I feel like he did promise that fresh start and that new beginning. And so I just want to encourage anybody that's out there listening, just this reality, like, you have messed up and you will mess up, but not to hold that over each other. Because as we do this together, when we provide that healing, that forgiveness, and that restoration, and looking to him and build on him, there is fresh starts and new beginnings.
Wow. Because God is a restorer, I think, to go back to like to what you said was helpful earlier, right? Because we know who God is. He's a God who makes everything new. Yeah.
Amen.
Well, thanks, guys. This has been really helpful. I think the thing that sticks out to me most is, God makes all things new, I guess, and like that was this real foundation of hope for both of you, and it led you to where you entered marriage with this, okay, now the work starts, and you knew that going in, and you had the hope to do it because God makes all things new, and he's going to make us new. And then you pursued it. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And what a powerful just testament to how God really does. That is who he is. He does make all things new. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Nick. It's good to be with you.
Thanks for listening to the Christian Marriage Podcast. Don't forget to grab your copy of The 7 Deadly Sins of Marriage Communication. And I hope that you and your spouse will be able to build a life-giving marriage together.